Waba, welcome to this week's edition of Ghana in Focus with myself, Kwame, Ghanaian writer, broadcaster, journalist, entrepreneur, and podcaster. And in this week's edition of Ghana in Focus, prostate cancer in Ghanaian men or Black men generally. So we'll be looking about that. What is prostate cancer? What is the cause? Who's at risk? What can be done? And the treatment, both that we would recommend natural treatment that can be done to alleviate the issue of prostate. For me, it's not cancer, but prostate enlargement, but there's a difference. So before we get into the show today, just to make you aware, but before I do that, we'll be starting a new segment of the show called UK Black, looking at issues that affect Black or African people in the UK, and we'll be starting that sometime in November. So look out for that. UK Black UK, looking about issues affecting the Black or African community in the UK. So before we start the podcast, just to make you aware, if you like what you hear, please share to your friends, family, social media networks. Subscribe to Ghana African Fix on YouTube. Hit the notification bell, meaning that YouTube will notify you every time we upload a new podcast. So please subscribe to Ghana African Focus on YouTube. All right. So also we are on Spotify. So look out for Ghana African Focus on Spotify. Hit the follow bell, meaning that every time we upload a new podcast, Spotify will notify you of that. So it's free to follow on Spotify, free to subscribe on YouTube. So please tell your friends, your family, your social media networks about this great podcast called Ghana African Focus. We're also on feedspot.com. Feedspot.com is a podcast tool that does charts of the most popular podcasts in Ghana. And in that chart, we're in the top 20 best listened to podcasts in Ghana. So thank you very much to all my listeners in Ghana who have made Ghana African Focus one of the most popular listened to podcasts in Ghana. So again, look out for feedspot.com to get us on that platform as well. All right, so let's get into this issue, looking about prostate enlargement, not prostate cancer, in Ghanaian men, straight Black men generally. So first things, what is prostate enlargement? Yeah, so cancer, let's make it, from the onset, that there's a difference between cancer and enlargement. Yeah, so prostate enlargement is when your prostate has enlarged, yeah? And it's because your prostate is the size of a walnut. And then when it enlarges, that signifies that you're having problems with the gland or organ that is called a prostate gland. Cancer is when basically the cells, or rather prostate cancer is a disease where the cells in the prostate gland grow uncontrollably, yeah? So the prostate, and this is very important for all you men out there and for you ladies who are married, or you got a boyfriend, or you got uncle, or you got brothers who are over the age of 40. So this is very, very important for you as well. So the prostate is a small gland in men located below the bladder and in front of the rectum, your arsehole. It helps produce sperm, yeah, or rather it helps produce semen, which is the fluid that carries sperm in men. Now, how prostate enlargement develops is that, or rather, cancer develops rather, is that normal cells mutate and they begin to multiply abnormally, yeah? So these cancerous cells can then form a tumor. In most aggressive cases, the cancer can spread to nearby organs or bones. Yeah. So what are some of the risk elements within or in terms of prostate cancer straight prostate enlargement? Now, it's most common in men over 50. Yeah. Ethnicity. So you are at higher risk if you're an African man. Yeah. So African man, and when I mean by African, I'm talking about African descent. So you may be born in Jamaica or St. Kitts or the Caribbean. You may be a black man of African descent born in Brazil or Colombia or Uruguay, Honduras. You may be a black man of African descent born in Germany, in Canada, in US, in Australia, in India. As long as you're a black man of African descent, you have a high risk of prostate cancer or enlargement. Again, another risk factor is a family history. So if you've got a father or brother who has had prostate cancer, then that increases your risk, yeah? So if you're a black man and you don't know about your father's history or your brother's history, then I would implore you to ask your father, yeah, or your brother to see if they have prostate cancer, or to see if your grandfather had it as well. Because like I said, if it's in the family, then you're more likely to get it than somebody who does not have a family history with prostate cancer, prostate enlargement. Also, risk factors. So diet and lifestyle plays a very key role in the causes of prostate cancer, prostate enlargement. Now, I listened to a presentation from Dr. Light Africa, one of our great natural homeopaths, and he stated that prostate cancer was basically due to, in terms of diet, in terms of the hormones, yeah, that they put in the meat, in the fish, the milk, and the eggs, yeah. So if it's not naturally organic eggs, and you eat non-organic grown eggs, then be careful. If you eat meat, that's not organic. Be careful. If you eat fish, yeah, that's not organic. And even more so because of, particularly disease on the oceans, contaminated with oil spills and also chemicals, yeah, be careful. Because that is a surefire way that you could get prostate cancer because, those things I just mentioned carry hormones that can cause imbalance to the prostate gland. Yeah. So diet is a very, very big cause, especially high fat diets. So too much meat, too much processed food, etc. Obesity. Yeah. So if you're quite obese, if you're quite overweight, that is a risk of getting prostate cancer. And also low physical activity. So if you're somebody that does not go to a gym, or if you're somebody that does not even do any form of exercise, if you are somebody, and this is particularly true among Ghanaian men, some Ghanaian men, or I say most Ghanaian men, that you're in your car all day into the office, you leave the office, you go in your car, you go home, you don't do any form of exercise, you don't even go for a walk around the block. That is a massive contribution to risk of prostate cancer. So, let's look at, before we look at certain nuances around this, yeah, and then we go on to look at natural cures as opposed to their Western type cures or treatment rather. Let's look at screening and diagnosis. So you can do a PSA test, which measures prostate specific antigen in the blood. High levels may indicate cancer, but low levels, for example, you've got 1, 2, or 3, or even 10, that's reassuring. Okay, but I'll come on to these tests in a moment. Why I may be skeptical of some of these tests. Also, they can do MRI or biopsy, which is used to confirm a diagnosis and assess the severity of possible prostate enlargement, prostate cancer. Digital rectum exam, DRE for short. A doctor checks for abnormalities in the prostate using this technique. So let's look at, so we've looked at, what is prostate cancer? What is prostate enlargement, which is enlargement of the prostate gland? We've talked about some of the, how it develops. We've talked about some of the risk factors, and we've talked about screening and diagnosis. So on this, then, I have my, reservations in terms of that. And I'm not being contentious or controversial when I say this, because we all saw, and maybe YouTube will not play this, and Spotify may also not play this element of it, but that's fine. But we all saw during the COVID pandemic, and it was a pandemic because it was planned, yeah. We all saw that the tests during COVID were not conclusive. So there was something called false negatives, yeah, that people were wrongly or misdiagnosed with COVID, yeah, because of this swab test that was not really conclusive, and also other COVID antigen tests that also proved, conclusive, yeah. And also, what we have to understand also, particularly when there are something, they're checking, like, for example, a digital rectal exam, when the doctor checks for anomalies in the prostate, believe it or not, what those tests are based on is the prostate gland of a white man. Yeah, just like they use, mice in the lab to test their products on. Yeah, their pharmaceuticals on, and the white mice genetics are similar to the white man. Yeah, the white mice genetics similar to the white man. However, the white mice genetics is 100% diametrically opposed to African people's genes, because the mice do not have melanin. You and I, as Africans, we have melanin, high grade carbonated melanin to boot. So these tests, like I say, are done. For example, the digital rectum exam is done using the prostate gland of a white man as the standard, not understanding, not understanding that the gland of the white man is different from the prostate gland of a black man, from a Chinese man, from an Asian man. Yeah, all glands are not the same, just as much as all blood are not the same, because most black people, most African people have got O blood with its own negative, own positive. That's our predominant blood type. Most European people, most Caucasians, do not have O blood type. They either have A or B. So if you have different blood types, yeah, you don't think that we're going to have different size and shape of a prostate, and also different genetical tissue and makeup of the prostate gland, yeah? So that is why I'm skeptical about these so-called tests. But I'm not saying don't do them. You have to make your own decision based on a sound judgment, based on the information that is at your disposal. So, which is another reason why we are doing this podcast, to give you all the information that you need in order for you, as a man or as a woman, if you've got a boyfriend, husband, brother, or uncle, to make that informed decision based on the information that you have at your disposal. And so for me, I'm skeptical about tests carried out by mainstream medical practice, because they're not based on in this case, as black man, prostate gland. It is based on the prostate gland of a white man. So that's the issue with testing, screening, and diagnosis. Now let's come to some treatment treatment options. Yeah. So the treatment depends. Or before I get to treatment here, let's look at prostate cancer in Ghana, to see how in Ghana itself, yeah, prostate cancer is becoming a big problem in Ghana because essentially, 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was not necessarily a big issue in Ghana, despite the fact that as I mentioned many times before, the healthcare system in Ghana leaves a lot to be desired. Prostate was never a big issue 30, 25 years ago. So let's look at Ghana. So prostate cancer is increasingly becoming a major health concern and a leading cause of death among men in Ghana, right? And now let me tell you what the latest data shows, yeah? So prostate cancer in Ghana, the alarming reality. So high mortality rate. In 2022, Ghana recorded over 2,300 cases of prostate cancer and 1,233 deaths, which represents a 52% mortality rate. Yeah, that's from the Graphic Online Ghana. Even high estimates, some experts like Professor Alex Ajay report that up to 82% of men diagnosed with prostate cancer in Ghana die annually, which is significantly higher than countries like the US or UK, where there's also a high mortality rate of African or Black men. Yeah. In Ghana, late diagnosis. Many cases in Ghana are detected at an advanced stage due to limited screening and awareness, making treatment less effective. Again, as I mentioned before, in terms of healthcare generally in Ghana, limited access to care. Yeah. So challenges include inadequate diagnostic facilities and also a few specialized prostate cancer centers that can deal specifically with prostate cancer and also high treatment costs. Yeah, because in Ghana, you pay for everything. And in particular healthcare, is very, very expensive in terms of treatment. Yeah. So why is it becoming a silent killer in Ghana? Yeah. So basically, there's lack of routine screening. So PSA tests and data rectum exams are not readily available in Ghana. There's also a cultural stigma in Ghana. Some men avoid discussing prostate health or seeking help. And there's also healthcare gaps. So rural areas often lack access to specialists or early detection programs, yeah? Now, going forward, what can be done in Ghana to ensure that prostate cancer, prostate enlargement, is not the killer that it is? Yeah. So what we recommend for Ghana is annual screening. So the government of Ghana needs to invest, yeah, in the indigenous local healthcare, not just the private, because obviously many Ghanaians can't afford to go private. And the issue is serious as prostate enlargement or prostate cancer. The government needs to intervene, yeah, by introducing screening tests, like we mentioned previously, and also early diagnosis, yeah, especially for men over 50 or those with family history. Again, every quarter, not just once a year, every quarter, there needs to be public awareness campaigns to educate men in Ghana about symptoms and prevention. And also government support. So investment, as I mentioned before, investment in cancer care infrastructure specifically, and subsidized treatment that can be paid in part by the government, subsidies. Yeah, because like I said, healthcare in Ghana can be very, very expensive. So, seeing that many Ghanaian men cannot afford treatment, yeah, the government subsidize, treatment. So, what are some of the symptoms? Because that's something I didn't go through earlier with you. What are some of the symptoms of an enlarged prostate? So, let's look at some of the, before we look at the treatment options, let's look at some of the symptoms of prostate cancer. So, one of the symptoms of prostate cancer is difficulty urinating or weak urine flow. Yeah, frequent urination, especially in the night. You may get up in the night, in the middle of the night, and urinate 3 or 4 times during that night. Okay, if there's blood in your urine or semen, that's a big red flag. They've got prostate enlargement, prostate cancer. Also, pain in the hips, in the back or pelvis is another red flag. And also erectile dysfunction. However, if you've got erectile dysfunction, that does not necessarily mean that you've got prostate cancer, yeah? So these are some of the symptoms that, are prevalent in men who are experiencing the early signs of either an enlarged prostate or potentially prostate cancer. So like I said, let's look at some of the treatment options in terms of the mainstream medicine. So they've got surgery, removal of the prostate. They've got radiation therapy. They've got hormone therapy, and they've got chemotherapy. Yeah, but as you know, for me, I am the natural way. I like the natural way. So we're going to also look at natural remedies in a minute. Yeah, but for me, these chemotherapy, radiation therapy, surgery, etc. For me, it is not good for black men. And I'll tell you why it's not good for black men. When they do surgery, right, and remove the prostate, which is called prostatectomy, that essentially is castration. When they remove the prostate, you can forget ever getting an erection. Yeah? You can forget getting an erection. And that's the first thing the European medical system wants to do to black men who have got either an enlarged prostate or cancerous cells that are developing into prostate cancer. They want to remove the prostate instead of giving you natural remedy. Yeah. So by removing the prostate via surgery, right? That is castration. That is the modern day castration. Yeah, for me. And we need to stop that. Again, radiation therapy, particularly as black people, African people, right? We've got high grade carbonated melanin. Radiation or chemotherapy, yeah, is basically the same thing because the radiation in the radiation therapy and the chemotherapy, they align or they don't align with melanocytes. In actual fact, high radiation, high doses of radiation in the chemotherapy and the radiotherapy can actually destroy the melanocytes. And I've seen black men who have gone through that, yeah, and that has destroyed their melanin. And I see a lot of white patches. One of my friends did radiation therapy, yeah, and he ended up like looking like Michael Jackson, yeah, because of the radiation that destroyed the melanin, yeah, and that didn't work for that person. My friend died after that, not so long after that therapy of radiation. So that shows you, right, that this European treatment is not necessarily for African people. Like I said, I'm just putting it out there. So you can make an informed decision based on the information that you have available that you feel is going to be the best for you. So I'm not saying don't do this or don't do that. I personally will not go down the radiation therapy, hormone therapy, or the chemotherapy because it plays havoc with our ability to produce melanin via melanocytes. And radiation definitely destroys our melanin. So let's look at natural remedies, yeah, that can be used to, eliminate, yeah, prostate cancer, yeah. But before we get there, let's look at some preventive measures that you as a man can take to ensure that the cancer doesn't spread and to ensure that your gland does not get bigger. And the gland itself is caused by inflammation because of the diet, i.e. lack of exercise, high sugar diet, high salt diet, high meat, yeah? So what you can do to prevent that is eat a more balanced diet, rich in vegetables, yeah? Particularly green leafy vegetables, fruits, yeah? That's got a lot of vitamin C. Particularly in Ghana, where we're in the tropics, right? Your pineapple, your papaya, bofre, watermelon, yeah? Sugarcane, These are rich in antioxidants and vitamin C, and also healthy fats like avocado or pear, as we call it in Ghana. Again, exercise regularly, at least every day. Do a brisk walk, yeah, or go to a gym and do like a cardio for 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, yeah? Again, limit red meat and processed foods. In Ghana, too much meat. Every meal Ghanaians eat meat, whether it's lamb, mutton, goat, chicken, too much meat. Ghanaians limit the red meat particularly. Avoid smoking and excessive alcohol, particularly among young men. That's now becoming a trend within young, well-to-do Ghanaian men and some middle-class men, yeah, who are smoking and drinking a lot, particularly at the weekend. That is a big factor, big risk factor in contributing to prostate enlargement or prostate cancer. Yeah. So these are some of the prevention and lifestyle choices that I would make. I would recommend that you do to avoid prostate enlargement and prostate cancer. Now, finally, let's look at natural remedies as opposed to the mainstream remedies that can be used if you do suffer from prostate enlargement or prostate cancer. Green tea extract, yeah? Now, green tea is very, very good. Green tea contains antioxidants that support cellular health. Lycopene, that's found in tomatoes, that is linked to lower prostate cancer risk. That is shown in some studies. So tomatoes are very, very good for you. So rather than boil your tomatoes, right, like in your stew, right, you can eat it raw as part of the salad. Yeah, so have some in contemporary, boil some in contemporary, right, or some dandelion, raw dandelion from your back garden. Yeah, get some lettuce, get some cucumber, yeah, get some tomato, get some onion, get some garlic. Do it as a salad. Eat that. Add tomatoes with that, and that is a very, very surefire way of preventing prostate enlargement and prostate cancer. Also, zinc and selenium, very, very important minerals for prostate function. Zinc and selenium is found in foods like banana and pumpkin seeds. These are very, very good for prostate function. Yeah. And finally, turmeric. Turmeric, yeah, or curcumin has anti-inflammatory properties that helps reduce cancer risk. Yeah. So if you drink turmeric tea, just get some hot water. Yeah. Mix it with a teaspoon of turmeric powder. Mix it and then drink it. Add a bit of lime as well. And then some black pepper. That will reduce inflammation within the prostate. Yeah. So these are some, for me, natural remedies that are proven that is much, much better for you as a black man than you allowing the mainstream authorities to take out your prostate with surgery, or worse still, radiotherapy or chemotherapy. Yeah. So in closing, so as black men, we've got to understand that, prostate cancer is not a death sentence. It can be cured, particularly you going down the natural route. Yeah. The risk factors are there in terms of if you're over 50 and if you are a man who's got a family history of prostate cancer, risk factors are there. And what I would recommend is that you can probably do the PSA test. Yeah. Or, like I said, change diet and lifestyle, which are big factors in contributing to prostate cancer. And government of Ghana, you need to invest in screening tests for black men, prostate cancer screening tests. Also invest a lot in outreach programs and awareness programs on TV and radio. Put it put a one-page ad in all the main papers in Ghana, the Ghanaian Times, the Observer, Daily Graphic, etc., to inform our men about some of the risks and lifestyle choices that contribute to prostate cancer. So these are things that the government can do, and these are things that we as African men, Ghanaian men, can do to help reduce our chances of prostate enlargement as well as prostate cancer. So thank you very much for listening to this special edition of Ghana in Focus with myself, Kwame. Ghanaian writer, broadcaster, journalist, historian, and entrepreneur. In next week's podcast, we're going to do our Black History, because it's Black History Month here in the UK. So we're going to talk to you or tell you about some great Black women, yeah, that contributed to Black history. And also we're going to tell you about some kingdoms in Europe that were once ruled by Black people. Yes, believe it or not, Black people actually ruled Europe. Contrary to what you know in Ghana, Black people, African people actually ruled Europe. And we'll tell you that in the show next week. So from myself, Kwame, and from all the crew here on Ghana African Focus, don't forget to subscribe to Ghana African Focus on YouTube, subscribe to Ghana African Focus on Spotify. Until next week, look after yourselves, and we'll see you in the next edition of Ghana in Focus.